Oh, the internet, isn't it wonderful? Where would we be without it? We get so much information, we learn so much, we're entertained. Isn't it so nice that we can see this type of page instead of this? But realize that they are exactly the same page. What I'm looking at here is the source code that my browser, Firefox in this instance, uses to put together this pretty page. This isn't sent to me as a big graphic from the server because it has to be able to do things like change depending on what my view is. Okay, I'm going to be using Dreamweaver as I had stated multiple times, but again, you can use any good HTML editor or you can use something like Notepad on Windows or Text Wrangler on a Mac. Or you can download Sublime or Brackets. I have the link to Brackets in the first module, so any of those that will work. But I am using Dreamweaver, and I can support you better if you use Dreamweaver. So the first thing you have to do always, always, always with Dreamweaver is you have to create your folder where you are going to work. I suggest that you create a folder on your desktop or somewhere where you have access to it in your documents. Anywhere really, it doesn't matter where you create a place where all of your websites that you work on will go. Personally, for me, I have my computer set up with a MAMP server, and all of my sites go into my htdocs file. So since this is the HTML1 assignment, I created a folder called HTML1. Additionally, inside of this folder, I created an image folder called Images. And I put an image in there that I'll work with today. Notice that Images does not have a capital letter. I don't have any funky characters, question marks, asterisks, slashes, anything like that. You want to keep your names of your images, files, everything that is within a website very simple. Generally all lowercase letters because servers are case sensitive, and no funky characters. Also, you'll notice in here I do have this DS store because Macintoshes create that. However, I don't have in here my PSD files. I don't have my history Word file. All that goes in this folder very cleanly is just the things that are going on the internet. If I see that you have a bunch of junk in your folder or your folder is not organized, I will dock points because organization is very, very important in the world of web design. There is no one way to organize a folder. A lot of times you see images is common. You'll see things like a folder called assets and then all of your things will go in there. As long as you have an organization that makes sense to you, that's okay. There are some standards that you will see that programmers use. We're not going to get into those, but when we get further along in the class and we get into WordPress and things like that, where you already get your website already somewhat established, you'll see the organization that is used there. But in the meantime, a good way to start is to have an images folder. You'll also notice that in here on the rubric I asked for file and folder structure, and I additionally asked for files to be named properly. This is what I am referring to, and for the rest of the semester as we go through, even if I don't have these items on the rubric, you will be docked if I see that you're not following that. Additionally, files named properly, we're going to talk about naming your first file index or default. But we'll get into that a little bit further on. So anyway, I have created this folder, HTML1. And now that I have Dreamweaver open, the very first thing I always need to do whenever I am working on a different machine or, have multiple sites, whatever's going on, I need to go into, have Dreamweaver open for starters. And I need to manage my sites, and I need to make sure that the site is properly defined. I've already done this once, so you can see over here in my files window, which will pop up if you see here files. It's grayed out now because it's open. These are all the sites I have defined. Oh, I'll pop that open in a second. But the way we do that is, let's pretend I have a brand new one. I would go down here and I would say new site. And then I am going to point to that folder that I already created. And since my computer is pretty smart, it's going right to that folder since I just had it open. So I'm just going to select that. I'm not going to go inside and select my images folder. I'm just selecting the master folder, not something that is inside of it. And then I'm going to say choose. Right now I'm going to cancel because my site has already been created, but I wanted to show you about how you create a site. So once I have that, right now at this unadvanced period of time, we don't have to worry about any of those. And then you would hit save. Again, I've already done it, so I'm going to hit cancel. As you have multiple sites, say you are always working on your computer and you have 12 different sites that you've defined because you have 12 different projects in this class, or you're working on a website for your mom or your friend or whatever, all of your site definitions cancel. All of your site definitions are going to be here. So these are all just different sites that I have had recently that are actively going on my website or on my inside of my Dreamweaver. Now the importance of this is so that you don't get broken links. Have you ever seen a website where graphics, instead of graphics showing up, there's a little teeny tiny red X in the corner? That type of thing is caused by not having good site definition, having things moved around outside of the class, whatever. But or having links that don't work inside of the site. All of those things are caused by having bad site definition. So I'm going to go ahead and select this site. Now you can see here inside of my local view, it's showing me all of my files that I have in there that count. That DS store that was created by my Macintosh isn't showing up because it's not really relevant to the site. But as I create things, it will show here. Now if I had a server, as we get up and we are starting to work with Bluehost, that view would be the remote server, but I didn't define that, so that's not really relevant at this time. Okay, so now I have that. I'm going to create a new file. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a new HTML file, which I could do from right there, or I could say file new HTML, which is the way I'm going to do it. Create. And there we have it. Now Dreamweaver and most HTML editors are going to give me some starter files or starter information. So you can see here that it tells me the doc type. And it's an HTML file. That's so that my browser knows what it is that I am looking at. There are other types of files that a browser may be trying to interpret. Since this is HTML, we just make it easy for it. We also have sets of match tags. Notice all of my HTML is going to be matched here with this starter HTML and that closing HTML. Whenever you're writing in HTML, things start with opening tags and closing tags. And they're wrapped in these greater than and less than signs. So you can see here I have a head, I have an opening head, and I have a closing head. And I can tell that this one's closed because I have that slash right there. Inside of HTML, you have the head information, which does not appear on the page, and you have the body information, which are things that do appear on the page. You can see here that I have meta information. Meta information, a lot of times you'll see meta space keywords equals and then a line of things, or description equals, or author equals. Those are all meta information that are important for the page. They may help search engine optimization, SEO, different things like that. What this one is telling us is that we're using UTF character set, which means that it's going to understand our different symbols, all of our percent signs and things like that. If you went to a different country and you were using different types of text, you may have a completely different character set. So this is just put in there by default by Dreamweaver to let us know that we are working with UTF-8, which is pretty broad. It gets most symbols and characters and things like that. You can also tell that this title here, which is wrapped in an opening title tag and a closing title tag. Untitled document is not appearing on our page. You can look here in Dreamweaver and you can see that we're in live design, but it's not showing up. However, if I go down here, and see I'm typing in my H1 open tag, H1 close tag, which Dreamweaver finished for myself, and then I'm putting my cursor in the middle. This is important because it will help us prevent nesting errors. So notice that this is appearing on the page, whereas this title is not. That is because the title is up here in the head, though it could still appear, but titles don't appear on the page. Let's call this Susan's page, and I'll show you where they do appear. So if I go ahead and I save this, now what should I call my first page? It needs to be called index or default.html. So since my site is already defined, you can see that it's going in and it's saving everything within this folder. Everything has to be within that parent folder. Otherwise, you're going to have files saved all over your computer and things are going to get broken. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to call this index, save. Now if I go down here, and you can't really see, but down here in the corner, because I think this goes off my recorded area, I'm hitting a little world icon that says preview or debug in browser. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, and I'm going to preview in Safari. So there's my hello world, and you can see my title shows up here. You can also see, if we take a look with this open, let's take advantage here to see how the Texas A&M web site is set up. You can see that we have the head. Here, there's the opening of the head tag. I also have my HTML tag, but here's the opening of the head tag. And down here, they have a bunch of script and stuff, but down here is the closing of the head tag. So even though they have a lot of different stuff in here, Texas A&M, there's my title. It has to put this in so that it recognizes the ampersand. So these things are all, anyway, neither here nor there. So let me go back to Dreamweaver so as to not confuse you with all of their tons of code they have in there. Okay, so if we take a look again at your rubric, in here I asked you to have your proper page structure. That is using your head tag and your body tag that are all, you have your opening, you have your closing, you have your HTML tags wrapped around everything. That's what we're looking for. Okay, additionally, I have multiple tags that I want you to use. I want the H1, H2, H3. Those are header tags. They go all the way down to H6. So let's take a look at how those work. So the headings go from H1 to H6, with H1 being the highest or the biggest and H6 being the smallest. So I can say, of course you're going to use these for differing levels of emphasis with the information on your page. I gave you a list of different tags that I want you to use here. So the P tag that I asked you to use is for paragraphs. Notice here that my opening tag has no slash, and then the closing closing tags have slashes. Okay, and you can see here if I put another P tag, it's going to automatically have break. I'm typing my tags and then I'm putting the cursor in between, again, because I want to avoid nesting errors where tags are not in the correct order. For instance, if the body tag showed up here, that may not be that big of a deal on this simple page, but when you start getting things that are out of order later on, as pages get more complex, you start having many more issues. Additionally, on telephones and things like that have more simple browsers, there's a lot less tolerance for having errors on the page. Okay, so let's say here, see how that shows up with the break? I also asked you to use horizontal rules, breaks, anchors. So let's see. Say I want to have a horizontal rule in between here. Horizontal rules are just lines. So you can see that put a line in my page right there. Sometimes you'll see horizontal rules like this, which is also correct. That's actually for XHTML, which is a much more specific, picky brand of HTML. The reason why we can put that, whereas you see it's the same slash that ends up in our closing tags, is because HR is just one object. There's nothing really that's contained within it, so it can be there with the closing tag itself, but that's not really necessary. What if I wanted to put a break right here? I can go here and put a break, and now that moved this down to the smaller line. If I wanted to, again, you may see breaks sometimes listed like that because that's XHTML. It's not necessary, but it works. Okay, my other thing that I asked you to use was to make A tags and external links. So let's go ahead and instead of having, well, we'll put another line. So let's say here that I want to put an external link to Google. So my A tag is going to look like that. And now I'm going to go ahead, I'll type Google in here, and that's the word that's going to appear. However, right now it's not a link because I don't have the hyperreference property inside of the A tag. So, and see how nice this is? Dreamweaver gives me these little hints here, so I'm going to go ahead and select that. Boom, boom. And now if I had other pages, if I was browsing to a page inside of my site, this would open this up and I would see my pages. So if I had, a second page, a page inside another folder, I could go ahead and select that. But in this instance, I want to go in and have this go to Google. And I have to type in the complete URL. I can't just type google.com. I have to type in http://www.google.com. And now see how that turned blue because I have the hyperreference. And if I go ahead and I save this and preview it in Firefox, if I click, I went to Google. So I also asked you to do some text formatting, and that's down here. So I want you to try a couple different things here. If you go into, remember our W3 Schools HTML tutorials, that's our textbook right now. And there are a couple different ways that you can format text. For instance, I put here, or here we can say italics, bold is strong. Well, bold and strong are basically, they're going to look exactly the same. But in here, for instance, I made this italics by putting an I. And notice this is important for our text, for our nesting, our tag nesting. My H2 is on the outside and my I is on the inside. The I is nested inside of the H2, and that's why it's important to type your opening and closing and then put your cursor, or to be very cognizant about these types of things. So in here I could change this to small, for instance, which doesn't really make sense with an H tag, but say would make more sense if I was doing a paragraph and I wanted it to kind of be set aside a little bit smaller than the other paragraph text. I can also do here block quotes, for instance. And that indented it in. And where I'm getting all of these different samples that you can use is in here in the formatting, but also look down in here at the HTML quotations. And this gives you how to use, for instance, block quotes, abbreviations. Now all of these things that are showing up here, they're not going to show up on the page, but if somebody actually wants to see where the heck did that come from, they're going to take a look at your code and that information is in there. If you want to have somebody's address, these things, sometimes they show up a little bit, they indent. They can indent things like this. If you cite, it says that it shows it in italics, so it does change how things are on the screen, and that's good because it can become more standardized and people learn to interpret the information based on the way they see it visually, which is good. But go ahead and play with those. While I'm in here, I do want to remind you to go through all of these things in your HTML tutorial. So W3 Schools hit this HTML tutorial. So I'd like you to read all of these here and go through and try these. Try it yourselves. They're kind of fun. So let's say, well, it's already done. I don't know what they want us to do there, but it's a lot of fun. Go through, you'll learn a lot. There's going to be a lot more in the W3 Schools than I can actually cover in all of these videos. So it's good, even though I'm telling you the bare minimum in the videos and giving you bare minimum examples, please do go through the readings and additionally. So this really is the bare minimum of all the tags and everything that I've asked you to do. However, this is just the building blocks. Please do not turn in a sample that looks just like this, or just like this but with different words. I want you to please go through, use this as building blocks to try to do something way more interesting. I just realized I forgot one important thing that I want you to get used to doing. Always wrap all of your contents in one div tag, and div is like a box where you put everything. And this is going to become more important as we go along. But for right now, to see how I have this div ID container, all of my contents are here. All of that's the last thing I want you to do. So this is pretty much everything that I want on the page. You can organize it, put more on there. Just use this as building blocks, but go and have a lot of fun. Oh yes, and one other thing I said that I need to do on here, along with putting that, sorry to throw all these things on you at the last minute. I also mentioned that you needed to have an optimized image. So I'm going to have a separate video on how to optimize your images for the internet, but let's talk about how we get them into your page. So let's say I want to put one right here. I can either go through actually the Dreamweaver menus, but I want to focus more on code right now, so let's go ahead and do that. So you can see it's popping up. Isn't it nice that it does that for me? So now I am also going to put in my image source, and since I have that photo that I already put into my images folder, there it is, and that's all I have to do, and now my image is showing up in my page. That's it. Now I promise. That's everything on the rubric. You are set for the week. Make something very cool and have